Blog Talk Radio.
Following ingredients include a look behind the scenes. Cook uncovered until hot. Add grooves to taste.
I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Once upon a time, there was a little girl.
The accident was over a year ago. A second woman has been elected president. The 12th planet has been named in the solar system. The last wild polar bear has died. I slept through it all. I was here for my waking. He called it a beginning. He said it was good. I think you may have thought that anything I did was good.
Welcome to Transition Radio, live from Hollywood, Florida, with your host and hostess, Mark Angelo and Jessica Lynn Cummings. Show for trans folks by trans folks, here to let your voice be heard.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Transition Radio. We're so glad you're able to join us again for another evening of a great interview. Tonight we have Lianne Simon. She's the author of The Confession of a Teenage Hermaphrodite. But before we bring her on, we want to thank our sponsor, thebreastworkstore.com. They have everything you need for your cross-dressing and transgender needs. Visit their website and tell them Transition Radio sent you. Lianne, the author of Confession of a Teenage Hermaphrodite, a deeply emotional tale of growing up with a sexually ambiguous body, born with a rare genetic disorder. Lianne struggled to survive infancy, the same intersex condition that made her tiny and frail as a child, and then gave her a pixie face and a timid disposition, also kept her from becoming the man her parents expected. Faced with testosterone injections meant to viralize her body, Lianne chose instead to preserve her feminine looks and change her legal status to female. Today, Lianne lives with her husband and their cats in the suburbs north of Atlanta. Now, welcome to our show, the lovely Lianne Simon.
Thank you.
Hi, Lianne. How are you, honey?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. How are you, sweetie?
I'm doing well, thank you. And you?
Doing very well. We're doing great. Thank you. We are glad to have you on the show. Lianne, tell us a little bit. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So tell us a little bit how it was growing up with an ambiguous body.
Well, when I was very small, I really didn't realize that I was different between the legs, but I was always the smallest of my peer group, and I was tiny and frail, and in ill health. I also have a small jaw, so I had a pixie face, which, people commented on how pretty my eyes were and how cute my face was. And my parents were liberal enough in allowing my behavior that I really didn't know that I was that much different otherwise.
Right. And how did people around you treat you?
When you're tiny, people treat you as though you're younger than you really are. When I was 9, I was the same size as my 6-year-old sister. People used to ask me when I was going to start school, and I was already in 3rd grade. And people at times thought that my 6-year-old sister and I were twins. We shared a lot of toys. We played together inside. We were the same clothing size. So I just really did have a pretty good childhood in spite of it all.
Well, that's actually a good thing to look, younger than you really are, especially when you get older. You realize that. And, a lot of us, we go through life and it's like, hey, we want to look younger. But, for some reason, it doesn't work out that way all the time.
No, I was really fortunate. Well, I guess it depends on how you look at it. I had a body that was easier from at least external appearances to be a girl, but more difficult from between the legs to be a girl. So what do most people go by when they meet you? They go by how you present yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Because what's in between your legs, people don't see. They just see the exterior. Absolutely.
And, of course, the drawback was that what was between my legs wasn't functional. So.
And that was through your whole life, pretty much.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that question.
Yeah, and that was pretty much through your whole life, right? You had issues with that.
Well, yeah, I had issues never quite being able to please, especially my father, in terms of being able to play sports or even be coordinated or look like a boy. When you don't go through puberty until you get it out of a bottle in your early 20s, you just don't look like other kids. And especially if your face is, testosterone admittedly could have made a huge difference, but I wasn't very interested in it because by the time that it was offered, I was happy being small and having a cute face. I didn't want it messed up.
Absolutely. So explain your struggles as an FM. The struggles you went through, like.
Oh, you mean like the medical stuff?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, I have a condition called mixed gonadal dysgenesis, and that means that I have Y chromosomes in some of my cells and not in others. And during fetal development, they all kind of get together and caucus and decide if there's enough Ys, then you'll get a testis. If there's not, then you get a streak ovary. And the type of mixed gonadal dysgenesis I had, it messed up both of the gonads. So I had a little bit of function of a testicular function when I was very young, but then it fizzled out. And it causes heart malformations and kidney malformations. It made me hypothyroid. I have to take some drugs for my adrenal glands. I was cross-eyed when I was young. I have visual, motor, and spatial temporal deficits, so I can't learn things like dancing or volleyball spike or basketball layup. And I also don't have any sweat glands below my neck, so if you put me out in the hot sun and I try to play sports, I'm going to overheat. So with all of those going against me, I ended up just being a very indoors, inactive sort of person, which also doesn't help your health at all. However, when I got to be about 9, I started growing faster and my health improved. And that was the age where my dad realized that it would be a wonderful time for me to start acting a lot more like a boy. But the medical issues weren't all, the ones that could be dealt with weren't all dealt with until my early 20s, which is when I finished college, which was the primary goal for my life set by my parents. And at that point, I still hadn't gone through very much of a puberty. So I went to an endocrinologist, and he recommended testosterone and steroids and an exercise program. But it wouldn't have fixed the spatial or motor issues wouldn't have made me taller. And by that time, I was quite happy with the way my body was. So after a 10-minute discussion, he put me on estrogens. But it was with the assumption that boys don't take estrogens, so you're going to have to get on the track to be a girl, which was, that was fine. I wanted to be something. I would have settled for a normal male body, but he couldn't do it. And so I went with as close to female as I could get.
Right. It really troubles me that the medical community has been, what's the word I can think of here? It's been very unfair and want to name a child male or female depending on what's in between their legs. What are your thoughts on the lack of autonomy that a person has who is born intersex and how parents in the medical community try to force the sex of the child without allowing that person to pick how they feel as they grow older?
Well, a lot of us have worked against infant surgeries, and there are some very good reasons for that. I knew a toddler who the surgeons had bullied the parents into allowing them to, quote-unquote, fix the child. And their solution for the child was to remove a perfectly good testis, remove a streak ovary, remove the clitoris, and do vaginoplasty on an infant. And y'all probably know that if you do vaginoplasty with a skin graft or something like that, you're going to have to do dilation. So the parents were faced with dilating their infant until she was old enough to do it herself. The other aspect of that is that most kids who have at least one good testis expect to grow up to be boys. So you have this child that has been basically had forced trans surgery and would have been dilated regularly, who wants to be a boy. And fortunately, the kids tend to be resilient enough that they can survive that kind of thing. But, of course, we're working against infant surgeries because they're cosmetic in nature. They're not really a medical condition. They're just a variance of cosmetic. I also knew someone who was being raised as a boy, even though she was, I think, 2 on the Quigley scale, which means that she had perhaps a 2 to 3 centimeter clitoris, still being raised as a boy. The doctors knew that it was incorrect, but they didn't tell the parents, and they didn't tell the girl because they figured that changing genders would be rougher on her than just growing up as a boy. So at 13, she got breast development, and she didn't think she had any choice, so she underwent a mastectomy. And it wasn't until she was in her early 20s that she happened upon a medical journal article about her case where they said she should have been raised female. And she decided to change her legal status at that point.
There's definitely a lot of ignorance revolving around all this, lack of knowledge, and it's like they want to place people in boxes. You're a boy or a girl, and they don't realize that it's not cut and dry.
Well, the other thing, of course, is that doctors think that they're doing the best by the patient, and I believe that most of them are really trying. But let's say that you assign a child male who has hypospadias. You're going to eventually want to repair it if he wants to stand up to pee. So you schedule him for surgery, and explaining the surgery to him, you say, well, we're going to make your penis look more like a boy's penis. And his response is, well, can't you make it look more like a girl's penis? So what they do is they go ahead and cancel the surgery, and they send the kid to the psychologists. But since the patient is going against the doctor's original assignment, in order for the child to have surgery to make the genitals look more female, she's going to have to wait till she's 18, because now she's transsexual instead of intersex, at least in their mind. So we transition for different reasons than most of the trans people that I've met. Like, I didn't have an overriding need to be a girl. I could have been happy, I think, as a boy, had my body actually developed along those lines. But who knows? It didn't, and I got tired of being in between, got tired of being different, and I wanted to be able to function in the context of a marriage. And if you can't do vaginal intercourse as a boy or a girl, you're going to end up having surgery if that's what you want to do.
Exactly. Well, I had those same kind of issues growing up myself, because all through my life I always had kind of a girl's body. I was always short. I was always thin, could not gain weight. And all through high school I was 115 pounds. So basically, I can tell where I can understand what you're saying about all that.
I believe that a lot of transsexual are actually intersex. It's a form of intersex, because basically I have the larger clitoris and everything else, but
probably more hormonal then.
Yeah, very hormonal. I just don't think there's enough studies out there and enough research and interest. Really, they just want to label us as freaks and deviant people instead of really trying to understand us.
Well, I have a theory, at least a potential explanation, and that's that in mixed gonadal dysgenesis, you have one cell line that's XY and probably fairly normal. You'll have another genetic cell line that is missing the Y chromosome. And that the X-only cell line doesn't typically do as well as the XY. So when you get to be 30 or 40, you may completely lose that cell line. But the damage was already done during fetal development. And if gender is strongly affected by testosterone production in the last 3 months of pregnancy and the, let's say, first 18 months of life, you could perhaps get a very masculine set of genitals and still not complete a strong gender, whatever you want to call it. You may not form a strong gender. And if there's any ambiguity in the case of the parents or in the way you're raised, then perhaps that contributes. I don't know. Generally, people who make up the definitions don't consider transsexuality to be an intersex condition. And I think that's partly because the diagnosis is not, you can't just go, well, here's the blood karyotype, here's the hormone levels, here's whatever other characteristics that you can point to in intersex. It's more difficult to do that with especially with, I would think, the female to male.
Right. Well, chromosomes are a big part of it. So, on intersex versus, transsexuals, basically transsexuals, it could just be a hormonal thing but not a chromosome. I can't say that word. Chromosomal problem. And then, with intersex, it's usually a chromosomal issue. Lack thereof or one too many.
It's just there's a lot of, a lot of unknowns about this.
Yeah. Which you kind of answered my question that I had for you about taking hormonal treatments at all in your life. You did mention estrogen at a young age, correct?
I've been on estrogen most of my life. I take testosterone and DHEA and progesterone. I take medications for my thyroid and for my adrenals. So they're all, the intent of all of it is to get all of my hormones properly balanced.
People don't realize that, one hormone affects another and throws off one system. It's a science that
has not been well looked at or properly researched.
Well, it's unperfected. It's imperfected. Unperfected, imperfected. Something like that.
What advice do you have for those parents of individuals that are facing this situation, that the child was born intersex?
Well, one of the main differences that I've seen between my generation and the current generation is, in my generation, the doctors would go so far as to hide the condition from the parents, or at least insist that the parents hid it from the kids. And so, a lot of my generation has shame generated by that. A lot of the younger kids, though, have been aware of their condition since early childhood, and they can be pretty nonchalant about it. So if you don't let the doctors make it an emergency, and you as parents stick close by the support groups so that you can find other parents who have been through it before, and the kids can meet other kids with the same condition. I spoke at PFLAG on Sunday, and it's wonderful that the parents are willing to at least talk to their kids, explain what the options are, explain that, it's okay to make some of these decisions. You don't have to pretend for your parents or undergo surgery for your parents. You can put all of that off and just learn how to be a kid.
And I'm worried so much about what box you fit in, because that's the problem with society. They want everybody, or they're forcing everybody to fit in a particular box. And I think if you're born a certain way, there's a reason behind that, and it's okay to be you.
Yeah. Everywhere you go, anything that you fill out paperwork-wise, there's always that box, and or app.
Yeah, and there is a third gender, and I do believe that. It's like you look at nature, two trees are alike.
Absolutely. Or just
well, I think you also have to be careful, though, to not let yourself get put into the box that everyone else with your condition is going into. For instance, I know they're trying out hormone blockers now, and they really don't have much history on what that does to you. And I'm well aware of some of the things that delaying puberty does to you. For instance, your arm span and your height are supposed to be the same. I think Da Vinci drew a illustration of the Vitruvian Man that shows that. But my arm span is 2.5 inches more than my height, and that's because without hormones, the long bones keep growing after you should have been through growing. So I have long arms and long legs. That contributes to joint problems. I'm not sure that they're telling children who are going into the trans programs and taking these blockers that there are going to be side effects, and they might be better off just going with whatever hormones you're going to end up on. Just go ahead and make your decision and live with the consequences. I just putting that out there as a suggestion. I don't claim to know enough about the medicine or about what the kids are going through, but just a warning that you have to be your own best medical advisor.
Yeah, and I agree with you completely, because it's not something that has been studied for years. And as I mentioned earlier, one hormone being off will affect other hormones, and we're pretty much guinea pigs. Here we are taking these hormones to transition to the gender that we feel we are, but we're not looking at the long-term side effects. We're not looking at things that could happen. And these younger kids that are blocking their hormones and then taking hormonal therapy very young at age are going to find themselves with a lot of health issues in the long run.
Well, I do believe, hormone therapy is reducing our lifespan by some sort of fashion. Can't go specifics, obviously, but
there's not enough long-term studies. They're winging it. They're getting in with it. And
the other issue that I face from not having the hormones is osteopenia. my bones are less porous than they should be. So, if I fall down the stairs, I'm likely to break a hip.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, there's a lot of issues.
But you can't spend your life in the past or in what ifs either. I wish I would have been born one way or the other, or at least not have all the medical consequences from it. But I wasn't, so get over it.
Oh, definitely. That's the way I feel. Of teaching society to stop judging, to allow people to be who they are, that we don't have to sit there and bring ourselves to this extreme to fit into what society wants us to fit in, or to feel that we have to be one or the other.
Right, exactly. So, Lianne, tell us a little bit about your book.
Well, Confessions of a Teenage Hermaphrodite. I'm going to start out by admitting that hermaphrodite's not politically correct. It's a good medical term for someone who has both ovarian and testicular tissue. It doesn't mean you can reproduce as both sexes or as either sex necessarily. And it certainly doesn't mean you have functional genitals for both sexes. You only have one, and it's somewhere in between. But the book is about a teenager who is growing up with a body that's sexually ambiguous, and who, for a time, was allowed to live as a girl until the authorities found out that she was still legally male and being illegally homeschooled, and the parents were faced with either having the kid taken away from them or having the child live as a boy again until they could find a doctor who would help correct the birth certificate. And by the time they found the doctor, the child's act had convinced at least the father that he was happy as a boy now. So they waited a few more years and decided to start him on testosterone. And at that point, he was 15. By the time he was 16, he found early entrance into college to leave home and get away from the shots. The book starts out with him in college. He's 4'11", still a soprano, has a cute pixie face, and has an appendectomy during the first week of finals. And after recuperating from that, is told by a medical student that he should have been raised as a girl. So he tells the medical student that, well, I was raised as a girl for a little while, and I'm really only pretending. So the medical student talks Jameson into staying with her for a couple days and just being her friend as a girl for a couple days. What happens is her brother returns home unexpectedly and meets what he thinks is a 12-year-old girl. And so Jamie ends up spending the entire Christmas vacation just living as a girl, even though, she's flat-chested and she's tiny. So the guy thinks that she's a 12-year-old girl, and she doesn't care. She likes being the guy's little sister for a while. The medical student gives her a much more feminine haircut, and then after Christmas vacation, Jamie has to go back to the boys' dorm with a more feminine haircut and knowing that she should have been raised as a girl. So living in the boys' dorm and functioning as a boy becomes much more difficult at that point. And the medical student continues to try to nudge Jamie into living as a girl full time. And of course, then Jamie's parents find out. And I will let you read the book to figure out what happens from there.
Wow. Well, we got less than 60 seconds left of the live show. The show will go into recorded mode, and people will be able to listen to the entire interview on demand. I want to know, how do you feel happy today? Are you complete? Do you regret anything?
I would really like to have had children. It just didn't work out that way. I was trying to prepare to adopt when I met my husband-to-be. And we both sort of felt that adopting children right away probably wasn't a good idea. Other than that, I don't think so.
That's good. Well, is there anything else you would like the listeners to know, where they get on your book?
Well, my website is at liannesimon.com. If they're interested in the book, Goodreads has a preview of it that's fairly long. It's available in ebook form and in paperback from Amazon, as well as from my publisher, who is Musitup, MUSEITUP, publishing.com.
We'll go ahead and put all that on our website, so you can also.
And they're welcome to contact me at liannesimon@yahoo.com if they want.
Okay. At yahoo.com. All that's going to be, we're going to have you on our website. You'll have a page set up by sometime this weekend. So it'll have, your bio, pictures of you, and the actual show, and ways that they can get a hold of you and also find your book.
Sounds good.
I'd like to thank you for the interview today.
Absolutely.
Do you all live in Hollywood area?
We actually moved to Wilton Manors.
Yes.
The show started off in Hollywood, Florida, and we just moved to Wilton Manors.
What area are you in, Lianne?
I am in north side of Atlanta, but I went to the book is set in Coral Gables. At least part of it is. And I used to hang out in Gables and North Miami, that area. Went up to Pirates World a couple times, if you remember it.
Yes.
I've been hearing a lot of people talk about that. Pirate World or something like that. And I would never been there when I was a kid.
They shut it down a long time ago.
Oh, wow. Well, Lianne, it was a pleasure talking to you. And I'm not sure if I have you on Facebook or not, but I'm going to send you a friend request. If you're not, check and see.
All right, thank you again. And if you ever wanted to be on the TV show, do you have any videos or anything like that of you?
There's a video on interfaceproject.org. It's actually out on YouTube. Just a short video where I talk about my first surgery was in. I don't mention where it was, but I had to have surgery twice because the first time was unsuccessful and the dilation was unsuccessful. And I did a bunch of things in between because I couldn't work up the courage to have surgery again right away. My first surgery was with Dr. Brown out in San Francisco.
Usually to be on the TV show, I require a few videos. I don't know if you've ever watched any of our TV shows, but part of the flow of the show is to put in video links and then the questions and Q&As. Yes.
Well, I have Skype, but my camera is not really very good. It doesn't, for some reason, do a clear image, even though it's supposed to be HD. So I would have to get another camera.
Okay. Well, let us know.
Well, I wish you both all the best in your program and jobs and family and all.
Thank you. Thank you. You have a great weekend.
You too.
Absolutely. And keep in touch. I just sent you a friend request.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening again. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Catch us this Sunday on Straight TV, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This weekend we have a female-to-male transsexual by the name of Storm Miguel, who is a performer, a very interesting individual. I'm sure you guys will enjoy that show. So good night, farewell, we love you, but remember to always love yourselves too.
Good night, everybody.